This is the famous 60 litre aquarium. Now I know it's not really famous, but the reason I say that is because recently a few of those Instagram repost accounts reposted a picture of my Instagram post that was of this tank, this angle as well. And those repost accounts had, thousands of followers. Whereas my Instagram, my fish Instagram that is, had about 1,000 followers. And over the course of the past week, I've now got 2,000 followers. Which is, it's fun. But it's because of this tank. The photo of this tank has been reposted by 3 or 4 different accounts. And it doubled my Instagram followers, which is good, yeah. So I thought, as there's quite an interest in this tank, to do a little tank tour. So I've done loads of different videos on this tank, on this YouTube channel, with the tank looking differently in each video, because I keep changing and adapting and adding to the tank. But the position of the tank's always been the same. I've just changed it about a bit. So I get a lot of questions about what I'm using, what plants I'm using, what substrate I'm using, all that. So I thought I'd go through everything that I'm using and how this is set up. So just before I get into it, I'm just going to say it's very simple. I'm not into creating tanks that need everyday maintenance or anything like that. I'm the type of person that wants to set up an aquarium that looks after itself. So apart from water changes, obviously, water change is very important. It doesn't matter how good your aquarium is or how well your fish are doing. Weekly water changes or bi-weekly water changes are a must all the time. Or you can do monthly water changes. It depends on the fish load to water quantity, but for most people it's weekly or bi-weekly. So this tank is pretty much bi-weekly water changes, 60 litres, and it only houses 18 neon tetras, which is pretty much fully stocked. I'm not going to be adding anything else. So first up, a lot of people say, oh, did you do this yourself? Did you make it yourself? Did you build it yourself? I think they're referring to the stand, maybe, because obviously I didn't build the tank myself, but I also didn't build the stand myself. I didn't build any of it myself, really. Obviously I put the stand together, but I didn't manufacture it out of wood. So let me go through what it is. So this stand is just a cheap stand, just off the internet. Bog standard, come flat pack, screwed it together. And then the tank is a turtle tank. I've told many people this before. It's a tank designed for turtles, which is why it's so short in height. It's only 25 centimetres high, roughly. So it's a very short tank. And I wanted that because I wanted these immersive plants. So I'll talk about that in a second. But this tank you can get from Amazon. I've always had the link in my description. I'll include it again in this video. But the tank is from Amazon and it's called a Cyano 80 because it's 80 centimetres long and it's for turtles. So all I did was take all the plastic stuff off that it comes with, like the little ramps and stuff that the turtles use. And it's just a bare minimum glass tank. So that's what it is, just on a standard cheap stand. So I used to use an All Pond Solutions hang-on back filter on the back. It was really cheap and it was really good. But the only thing was that as soon as the water level dropped slightly, it started making a noise, which is good though because it's a good indicator that the water level has dropped. But because this is an open top aquarium, the water level drops quite quickly, especially in the summer. And it starts making noises, like splashing noises, because the water's got a long way to drop into the tank. Plus, because the hang-on back filter was at the back there, over here we didn't have much water flow at all. It was pretty much stagnant. And what I did have spare was a Fluval 206 canister filter, and I really like Fluval and their products, and it's quite powerful. So I thought, let's just put this on there instead. Drilled a hole in the back of the stand, the pipes come up through the back, and it's really nice, it's working really well. At the moment the output's quite low, but you see if we raise this output, we get a really nice water flow. Which is really good. And you can see the water flows all the way to the back here. So there's no stagnant areas. We've got some really good flow as opposed to what I had before. And you can see that filter in all my previous videos regarding this tank. And you can see that the water flow didn't really reach this end of the tank. But this one's doing really well, and it's really quiet. So that's one change that I had on here. So we just go through the substrate and the plants, because I get that question quite a lot. So the substrate is just very standard black sand. It's not a substrate for growing plants or anything like that, it's just standard sand. And you can get similar stuff from various places. I've got links to those in the description as well. There's quite a few on the market that are similar in shape and size and colour. One of them being from Denali, but it's quite expensive. Another one's Pothos Roman gravel. So over the years I've mixed and matched them, and yeah, it's just pretty much standard black substrate. What I use for the plants is root tabs. That really helps with plant growth, because obviously there's no nutrients in the substrate, and I don't dose fertilizers or CO2. So root tabs are really good. They're basically just clear tablets with fertilizer inside, and you just bury them in the substrate, and the tablet dissolves and the fertilizer stays beneath the substrate for the plant roots. And with plants like these growing out the top of the water, you really do need some sort of nutrients in there for those roots, because the root system's quite big. So those plants are what a lot of people are interested in, and also these plants coming out of the tank. I've done YouTube videos on these plants before, and I've told a lot of people on Instagram and YouTube comments what these plants are. These are basically Pothos. It's a house plant, and it does really well in water. It's really hardy. It will grow in any aquarium. And since I've added more water flow, the roots have really grown quite long, which is really good. So as you can see, the roots are pretty crazy. The plant's really good, and it does really well for removing harmful chemicals out of the tank, like nitrates, for example. It's a really nice plant, and I advise anyone just to get the plant, wash off the dirt and put the roots in the water. Done. So another thing I did this recently, I posted it on Instagram, but this plant here was out of my pond. The pond's pretty much overgrown, so I was removing a load of plants, and this is just a nice plant. So I just stuck it in the water. You see that root there, the big red one? I just put it into the substrate at the bottom, and it's been in there a couple of days. It seems to be doing quite well, so we'll see what happens there. It's an interesting one because it actually develops flowers, so that'd be really nice if it does that. So another one of the questions I get is, what are these plants here? These are Echinodorus, and they're growing really well. So they're basically the same as an Amazon sword, from the same family anyway. And you can see that because it's growing these underwater leaves that are a little bit like Amazon sword leaves. They're quite skinny. I'm not sure actually what they're going to do, if they're going to grow bigger or more of them, but they've only just recently developed. But the plant is called an Echinodorus Argentine, and it's a nice plant. It grows out the water quite high up, and every time it sprouts a new leaf, like this one, the new leaf eventually grows higher than all the ones before it. So you can see here, this is one of the newer leaves and it's massive. So what you do, you just cut off the shorter ones and it will grow bigger ones every time. And every few days it sprouts off one of these. It's really nice. So that's what that plant is. And lastly, the light. It's a cheap light, it's a cheap LED light. It's from Amazon. If you just put in Amazon LED aquarium light, I have the link to that as well. But if you just put that in, you'll get a load of LED lights. And this is one of them. I think it's from Nicru, but they're all pretty much the same. It's nothing fancy. I've just got it hanging from the ceiling. It's just a standard light. And the tank's doing really well. As you can see here, I've got a few of these dirty looking S repens, Storagen repens, S repens. And basically I had a different tank in this spot before. It was 60 litres, same as this, but it was taller, and I had sword tails in here, and I had the best S repens carpet in there you could hope for, honestly. I've got YouTube videos on that, and it just did really well. No CO2, no liquid fertilisers, just a little bit of root tabs here and there, and I had a full carpet. And actually, when I changed the tank and decided to have a change of design, I replaced it with this tank. I had to pull all the S repens up out of the substrate, and it was so thick, and I had to really yank it out. It'd grown so well, and I was looking back at pictures of that, and I want the same thing again. I want to replicate it. So here are the S repens. I have quite a few sporadically planted, and I'm hoping, give it time. I'm not using CO2. I'm using a few root tabs, so it's going to take a long time, but eventually I'm hoping that I get a really nice carpet like I used to have, and I can show it off. But at the moment it doesn't look great, but it will do eventually. So this is the tank. It's very standard, anyone can do it. A lot of people are interested in this tank, so like I said, I just made the video just to clear up what I'm using and how I'm doing it. But again, any more questions, then please comment below or get in touch with me on Instagram, as a lot of people did when they started following me. I got a lot of questions. It was very interesting, it was good. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Thank you for watching.